Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Landrum. I'm the president and CEO of the Alexandria Economic Development Partnership, and we are happy to have you here with us today, along with my colleague Carl Moritz, who is the director of the city's Department of Planning and Zoning. We have been leading a team of city and related organizations focused on preparing businesses for reopening. And so today is our third webinar. Today's focus is on businesses who work in personal care and grooming, so salons and spas and other like businesses. So hopefully you are here in the right meeting. We are going to walk through some of the checklists and guidelines that are required of a business to reopen as we go into phase one of the governor's Forward Virginia plan. We actually, in about an hour, are expecting to potentially hear from the governor that we absolutely are planning to move into phase one on Friday. He indicated yesterday that the plan is for us to move into that phase on Friday as Alexandria and Northern Virginia. We have with us today a quick agenda, so I'm going to go through and introduce the other panelists, and then we'll provide you with an overview of general guidelines from the governor, an update on a new program called ALX Promise that the Health Department and Visit Alexandria have launched. And then we'll talk through a new grant program available to small businesses in Alexandria. And then finally, there will be a section for questions and answers. We will be sending a follow-up email to all attendees with this PowerPoint presentation and any of the links and documents that are referenced. And so, and then all of this will live up on a website where you can go back and reference it. And we also are recording this presentation, so you can go back and listen to it if you would like. So today's panelists, I've introduced myself and our planning director, Carl Moritz. We also have Rachel Stradling, who's with the Alexandria Health Department. And at the end of the session, available for questions and answers, are our colleagues Alex Block with the Department of Transportation and Police Chief Michael Brown. You all might have some questions about queuing and letting people into your businesses, and we thought that both of them might be a help to answer questions there. And so with that, I will move into the kind of first overview slide. I think most people understand that we have been in phase 0, which is stay at home, really since back in March. And that our current situation, as dictated by the Commonwealth of Virginia, has been very restrictive. And for businesses like personal care, essentially you have been closed. As we prepare to enter phase 1, which is safer at home, again, anticipating starting this on Friday, May 29th, there are a new set of guidelines that will allow businesses who previously were not allowed to operate under a certain set of new, still pretty restrictive guidelines. And so our goal here today is to explain those to you. Assuming that our phase 1 is successful, we continue to control the spread of the virus and the health metrics that the governor and elected officials use to evaluate movement between phases. Assuming we continue to move in the right direction, we would hope to be entering into phase 2 sometime in the 2 to 4 week period. What we don't know yet is what requirements will be loosened or changed in phase 2. We will promise to reconvene this group as we learn more about what guidelines come forward in phase 2. And then phase 3, I think, is what we're all aiming for, which is certainly more of a recovery, a little bit more back to normal, but that may still be 10 to 12 weeks away. This is all coming again from the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is the ultimate decision body in terms of what phase our region and City of Alexandria enter. So these are the specific reopening guidelines for personal care establishments. And the directive from the Commonwealth is that as an operator of a personal care establishment, you must either implement the following mandatory requirements or you must remain closed. I think the big areas that we have highlighted here, and we'll be sending all of this to you with more specific information, but we wanted to touch on the areas that we can help answer questions. Number 1, your capacity must be limited to no more than 50% of your lowest occupancy load on your certificate of occupancy. You also, though, must maintain a minimum of 6 feet of physical distance between all individuals. So that includes you, your employees, and your customers. Services have to be by appointment only, and for those of you who sometimes juggle multiple customers, you can only have one customer at a time, so you can't overlap. Your stations must be staggered with at least 6 feet of separation. You must maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet in the waiting area and other parts of your facilities. You can use staggered appointments to minimize the number of individuals who will be congregating in a waiting area, and also make sure that you're programming in time to disinfect your stations or areas between clients. All of your employees who are forward facing, so who will be coming in contact with customers, must wear a mask, a face covering at all times. The governor announced yesterday that this is not just for businesses, but is going to be required of all residents, visitors, business operators in the Commonwealth of Virginia to essentially wear face coverings while in public. You also are there, the government, the Commonwealth is recommending that you provide face coverings for your clients, or make sure you ask that your clients bring a face covering with them, and that you can only provide services that can be completed without your clients removing their face covering. So I know that there likely are some questions or concerns with this group about that requirement. And then finally, employers must maintain a list of the names and contact information for all clients to include the date and time services are received. This is clearly related to tracing and making sure that we have complete information should, I suppose, someone present themselves as infected after coming and visiting your business. So these are the guidelines directly from the Commonwealth. Now we're going to move on, and I'm going to turn it over to Rachel Stradling with the Department of Health to tell you about their role and a new program that they're launching.
So the health department has been charged with the regulation of phase 1 for all businesses. So in order to aid that, we came up with a voluntary scheme which is designed to help businesses comply with the requirements set out by the governor, but also to try to help restore some confidence in our community that we are reopening in a safe and gradual manner. So the way the promise works is you register online. One of our environmental health specialists will reach out. They'll talk through the particular requirements. There's a training component which you would then use to train your staff to make sure that they're fully aware of social distancing requirements, face coverings, hand washing, cleaning and disinfection. And there's also a checklist that we ask you to go through, which is unique to each different business sector. Once you've done that, you return those documents to us with a signed pledge, and in exchange for that, we will give you one of our awesome ALX Promise decals to display in your window, and also put your website information on the Visit Alexandria website. So hopefully we can reassure the community that we're opening safely and gradually, and putting their needs and safety first.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rachel. So next we want to talk with you about a new grant program that the city will be launching next week, the ALX B2B Back to Business Grants. This will be a online grant application. This is money that will be made available to small businesses that meet criteria that I'm about to explain. City Council decided a few weeks ago that they would direct staff to expend CARES Act dollars, so stimulus funds that the city will receive, in 4 main categories. One is to provide food security for residents and residents of Alexandria. The second is to provide additional resources to our health department and health providers. The third is to help those struggling with residential rental costs. And then the fourth was to help the small business community directly. So the ALX B2B business grants will be available to companies, businesses here in the city of Alexandria in the following 3 employee bands, 2 to 24, 25 to 49, and 50 to 100. The intent of these grants is to help you reopen and rescale. And so the acceptable uses listed here are the sorts of things that we expect you are going to need to spend money on or have already spent money on. The criteria to qualify for this grant is that you must demonstrate that you've had a 25% negative revenue impact attributable to the emergency. I think for most businesses in this category who've been forced closed over the past few months, your negative revenue impact is probably much greater than this. You must be a licensed business in the city of Alexandria. You must also have a physical location here. we are asking, we're going to be asking you in order to prove the 25% negative revenue impact for year-over-year financials. And so for that reason, you must have been in operation as of March 1st of last year in order to be able to provide the one-to-one, the year-over-year financials to show that impact. You must be a for-profit entity, and you must also be in good standing with the city. Good standing means that prior to this pandemic emergency, you were not delinquent on taxes, you did not have liens, and you did not have a pending sort of zoning enforcement or planning issue, which Carl can certainly answer questions about. But as he has assured other groups, there are very few businesses that fall into that category. We are looking to invest in businesses that are going to give it their best shot to reopen and reemploy folks. And so we need to assure that businesses are not in bankruptcy proceedings. We also will be asking you about the length of term of your lease. In order to qualify, you must have between 2 and 100 W-2 employees. And I know in this field, there are many of you that utilize 1099 contractors, but the bare minimum to be eligible for the grant is 2 employees. That one employee can be an owner. And so really what that means is a receptionist, anyone can qualify, but you must have an employee, a W-2 employee, full or part-time. You also must prove that you are locally owned and operated. This is to prevent corporate franchises, essentially, that are corporately owned from participating in this program, but you can be a franchisee. You will just have to show us that paperwork. And then finally, we have made ineligible businesses that were not impacted by the governor's closure. So financial institutions, grocery stores, pharmacies, and gas stations. And so now we are going to move into the questions portion. I've seen a couple of them pop in. I guess I'll also, Carl, if there's anything you want to add here before we jump into questions, feel free.
Normally, there aren't a lot of zoning questions related to these businesses, but if you have any, we are here to help. I think we've tried to make zoning less of an issue in the operation of your business, but if you've got something that's pressing, I'm more than happy to help solve it for you.
Excellent. So I'm going to go to the questions now. So the first question I see is actually a tax question, and I don't believe that we actually have our tax professional, our finance staff on the phone, but I can probably help answer this question. It says, I'm a small business in Old Town that owns my own property. I have thousands of dollars in real estate taxes due on June 15th. Is there any relief here? Obviously, I was mandated to close March 23rd, so my revenue has been zero. I've lost more than $200,000 in revenue to date due to the mandated closure. How is the city going to work with me on property taxes? Is it fair that the city gets 100% of expected revenue from me while I was mandated to close and lost 100% of revenue? I get that we are all in the same boat with revenue, but is this a shared pain, or is it just my problem and my pain? So I would say that this is, appreciate the comments, and we have heard certainly from a number of businesses who own real estate that the pending real estate tax date is looming. The finance department, if they were on here, would tell you to please reach out to them and we can provide that contact information. They will absolutely talk with you and work with you on a payment plan. City Council was able to suspend and defer a number of business taxes and penalties, but they discussed at length the real estate tax and were unable to move the payment date of June 15th. The issue for the city is that we operate on a fiscal year, and the fiscal year ends June 30th. And so by deferring, if they were to defer the real estate tax, it would essentially cause a significant hole in the city budget. And while I know this is not what a lot of businesses probably want to hear, the city itself, from a revenue perspective, is very much in a victim position as well because of this disease. Just in this fiscal year, which is about to end, the city has lost close to $35 million of revenue. through lost real estate taxes, retail sales taxes, et cetera. And those monies then go to pay for services that are provided throughout the entire city. And so there just was not a position that the city council could take to defer the real estate tax without really compromising the finances of the city in total. So the takeaway, though, for those of you who are struggling with real estate taxes, and this is something my team has said to businesses from day one, is talk to the people who you owe money to. Talk to your landlords, talk to the city. Everyone understands the situation that we're in, and most people are willing to find ways to help you make it through. What we all want is for all the businesses to survive. So we will provide contact information for Kevin Greenleaf, who is the division chief of tax revenue for the city, and he would be the person for you to talk with directly. So the next question is, so with half occupancy comes half the income. What economic assistance will be in place to help cover this missing income? Just because we are open doesn't mean you're giving us the opportunity to be profitable and cover our still needs to be paid rent and expenses. The self-employed and 1099 businesses are on our own. The grant program that we just walked through was, again, created to help small businesses. And while $4 million is the total amount available, it is certainly not, we know that there's more need than there is available funds. And so if you are self-employed or a business that is excluded from that grant program, I would encourage you to reach out to our team and talk to us about other resources available. Hopefully, many of you have utilized the federal disaster loan and PPP programs. There's still money available through the PPP. So if for some reason you did not apply for that in the past, our team can walk you through those qualifications, those program qualifications. There are still billions of dollars available. That has been the goal here of our team from the beginning of March, is to help every business in the city either qualify for federal aid, whether it was through the SBA or through unemployment. For those of you who are sole proprietors, you have been able to apply for unemployment. For those of you who are 1099s, you have been available or eligible to apply for unemployment. So if you have not done those things, please reach out to our offices, the Alexandria Economic Development Partnership or the Small Business Development Center, for guidance on how to access those resources. The next question is, what is a minimum occupancy? My certificate of occupancy only states a maximum number.
I was going to say, Stephanie, that a number of different business types sometimes have a range of occupancy on their certificate of occupancy. For example, a restaurant will have a larger number of occupants if the floor is cleared of tables and it's just a reception versus tables and chairs. So if you have a certificate of occupancy that has just one number, then that's the number that you would use.
There's a question about, we provide facial services. Will clients be able to receive a complete facial, including touching the skin, usually covered by a mask?
So my understanding of the governor's directive is that the mask has to remain on for the duration of the service. So unless there's a way to do a facial without going anywhere near where the mask is covering, then no, you would not be able to do that, unfortunately, in phase one.
Okay. There's a question that says, our lease ends March 2021, but we are trying to sign a new lease, so will we still be able to qualify for the grant? Yes, you will. Can grant money you talked about be used for real estate taxes? My answer to that question is, we would like for you to use the grant we would not like for you to use money given to you by the city to pay back to the city. That said, we understand that you have a variety of expenses that you need to pay, including rent, and so, or a mortgage payment. That is acceptable. And so we would encourage you to, when you apply for the grant, to acknowledge that you would spend the money on the mortgage portion and not the taxes. I'm wondering what the procedure for our staff should be if a customer is harassing staff because of a request to wear masks or because of wearing masks. Do the police have the capacity to deal with such calls, or is there another process we should follow?
I'd like to weigh in on that if I could.
Yes, please.
This is Mike Brown from the police department. We anticipate that we will be getting some calls for those, we hope, rare situations where people are not willing to wear the mask. Or what we do suggest is that obviously the proprietor or the business owner provide masks and encourage people to wear it. We don't want to get in a situation where we're issuing citations for not wearing masks. That said, the health department has ways in which they can offer some degree of compliance, but in a situation, that rare situation, when you have someone who is being obstinate or getting in the face, if you will, of one of your employees, then feel free to call us on 911 and we will respond and try to restore order. The key here is not to make a major case out of this, but it's serious, and it's a serious health issue to encourage people to have the mask. And there's a responsibility as the business owner that we're hoping that you will deal with in terms of not only having them wear a mask, but maintaining the social distancing, especially if they're in a queue outside waiting for your services.
Great, thank you. I see a couple of comments about unemployment money not yet coming through. Again, I would encourage you to reach out to our teams. Unemployment in particular has actually been being handled by a different part of the city, but we can certainly put you in touch with that group. What will the city be doing to draw business back to Alexandria? Are there marketing campaigns planned, say, for the next 6 months and 12 months? So our partners at Visit Alexandria are the group that focuses on bringing regional and national tourism and visitors to the city, and they have a complete recovery plan in place to include marketing responsibly as we reopen. And so they are studying and have studied what consumers are going to be comfortable doing. And their strategy focuses on bringing back local and regional travel and visits, obviously in advance of bringing back people who would be flying here or staying in hotels, which we believe will take much longer for recovery. So yes, please note that that team is very focused. They are aligned with the health department, as you heard, with the ALX Promise program. And so they are not going to be in a position where they are promoting or marketing the city for travel in advance of when or in conflict with recommendations that are coming through the Commonwealth. And I guess I would remind you all that while we are excited to enter phase one is still called Safer at Home. And so the underlying message is still that the disease is present and that we need to be very careful and that for a variety of reasons, we should still be staying at home when possible. But it does recognize that business needs to proceed and provide those sort of guidelines for responsible opening of businesses. There's a question for you, Rachel. Will the health department be enforcing code with all businesses?
So obviously for phase one, the governor has significantly expanded the number of businesses the Virginia Department of Health is regulating. We will obviously be enforcing to the best of our ability the requirements of the executive order for phase one, but we will be doing it more on a complaint basis. We would not be doing inspections. And obviously we stepped away from regulating personal grooming about 6 years ago, so we wouldn't intend to obviously pick up that enforcement piece again, if that was kind of where you were going with the code question.
Yeah, and actually I just identified there were a couple of questions submitted earlier and prior to the session, and one of the questions was about why the personal care industry became deregulated, and some concern about how people who work in salons go to school and are required to be licensed, and part of that licensing is to study disease control. and there was some concern that there are hundreds of illegal salons in our area that are not following that same licensing protocol. And so I don't know if you have that background or history, Rachel, to share.
So I was here when personal grooming was deregulated. It was deregulated because we were only responding to complaints at that stage. The inspection piece is actually done by the licensing body for the state. And it's not right to over-regulate businesses, so more than one enforcement authority looking after them. So that's why we stepped away. In the 12 months prior to our decision to step away, we received 0 complaints from the public about personal grooming establishments. So that's why we stepped away. It was a conscious decision at that time that they were being regulated in another way. But if you do know of salons that are operating without the correct licensing, there is a phone number that you can call to report those businesses, and I will put that in the chat once I quickly look it up on my phone.
Fantastic, thank you. And Rachel, we can also include that information in the follow-on email that we send to attendees.
That would be perfect.
So I think we have made it through the questions on the Q&A and the chat. If we don't see anything else, we will bring this to a close just by saying that we are excited to be entering phase 1 and want to do so responsibly. We will do everything in our power to help you all. So if as you open this weekend, once allowed, you run into questions or issues about queuing on your sidewalks or questions about, that the health department can help answer, please reach out to us. We want you to be successful. We want you to get back to profitable as soon as possible. Many of us are really looking forward to utilizing some of your services after being held back from them for many months. And so, so please know that any of us are always available to answer questions. We appreciate you all attending today, and we'll be in touch shortly with the follow-up information. Thank you.